And so after her death in October of '84, Mr. Bishop had guaranteed under the will that he would take care of this little request of hers.
It was 1885 when a news story appeared in the Daily Honolulu Press, a local newspaper. It read, "We have it on good authority that Charles R. Bishop has in contemplation the establishment of a museum of Hawaiian antiquities. If circumstances so aid Mr. Bishop that he is enabled to carry out his public-spirited project, the nation will be greatly the gainer. If done, it is well that it be well done and done quickly." As things turned out, it was.
Because I want to talk about the things that you're going to be studying as you go through this part of the museum.
Charles Reed Bishop left his native New York in 1846 to seek his fortune in the Oregon Territory. Bad weather forced his ship to Hawaii, and he decided to stay. A few years later, Bishop married Bernice Pauahi, a princess of the royal family, great-granddaughter of King Kamehameha the Great. Mr. Bishop went on to found Hawaii's first bank and become a leading figure in business and in government. Mrs. Bishop, through inheritance, would become one of the richest people in the kingdom. A series of events in the 1880s would set the stage for the museum to bear the Bishop name. The events were the deaths of 3 women, all members of the royal family. The first was Princess Ruth. She left her extensive land holdings to her second cousin and closest relative, Princess Pauahi. The princess, now Mrs. Bishop, would die the next year at the age of 53. She owned 1/9 of all the land in the kingdom. In her will, Pauahi set aside the proceeds from the land for the founding of a school for native Hawaiian children. She left her personal possessions to her husband. The next year, another of Hawaii's royalty died, the Dowager Queen Emma, widow of King Kamehameha IV. Emma also left her personal possessions to Charles Bishop. Her intention was that her curiosities, as she called them, would be combined with Pauahi's for a museum to honor the royal family. Charles Bishop diligently went about the job of carrying out his wife's wishes. First, he directed his attention to founding the school. 3 years after Princess Pauahi's death, the Kamehameha School for Boys opened. It was built on a barren piece of land in an area known as Kalihi, a couple of miles from downtown Honolulu. Bishop also chose a site for the museum that he and his wife often had talked about. Museum construction was completed in 1890. There were 3 small exhibit areas, including the Kahili Room and the Pacific Room, now called the Vestibule. Roger Rose is an ethnologist at the museum, an authority on the cultures of the Pacific. His office is in Bishop Hall, one of the last 2 buildings from the boys' school, which long since has moved. Rose is the museum's unofficial historian. He says that one key decision by Charles Bishop may have ensured the museum's eventual success. It was hiring as curator an outspoken scholar named William Tufts Brigham.
I think it's pretty clear that Mr. Bishop realized that Brigham was highly qualified. He had had some 25 years of prior museum experience in Boston. Bishop recognized his scientific ability and his general ability to deal with all manner of issue. He was a visionary, Brigham was, And this was a quality that was needed in establishing a new institution. Bishop knew his man.
For 8 years, Brigham was the museum's only full-time employee. He did everything. He was curator, he was janitor. But the work became too much, and Charles Bishop provided Brigham with the money to hire a staff. As the staff and everyone else learned, Brigham was brilliant and hard-working, but not the easiest person to get along with.
It's quite true that genius often causes irritability in other people. He was at times difficult to get along with. By the time he had started working as curator at the museum, he was 50 years old already and was starting his second career. He was a trained lawyer, so he was in no position to let anyone try to get away with things. So he stood up for his own rights, and he worked for the betterment of the institution throughout.
Charles Bishop left Hawaii in 1894, in part because of the political unrest surrounding the overthrow of the monarchy the year before. He moved to San Francisco, where his interest in Hawaii continued. He set up a financial trust to support the museum and other local causes. Charles Bishop died in 1915 at age 93. Before Bishop left Hawaii, plans already were in place to enlarge the original building bearing his wife's name. First came the Polynesian Room, now devoted to the various cultures of the Pacific. Hawaiian Hall was completed at the turn of the century. It's one of the most beautiful exhibit rooms of any museum in the world. The cathedral-like setting contains a priceless collection of objects, tracing the cultural history of Hawaii from before the arrival of the first Westerners through the years of the monarchy to the immigration of the 19th and 20th centuries. Two large exhibits in Hawaiian Hall have been there since the day it opened, examples of William Brigham's vision as curator. One is a house made of pili grass depicting how Hawaiian families lived hundreds of years ago. The house is unique in all Hawaii. There isn't another one like it. The other exhibit hangs from the ceiling. It's that of a sperm whale, a reminder of the significant role Hawaii played in old whaling days. The outside of the whale is made of paper mache. From the third floor, visitors can see that the inside is an actual whale skeleton. This exhibit was the first of its kind anywhere in the world. The museum library used to be on the third floor of Hawaiian Hall. Now it's in one of the office and research buildings behind the main part of the museum. When the library opened a century ago, it was only open to visiting scholars and staff. Now, its maps and manuscripts are available to scholars and school children alike. It's here they'll find one-of-a-kind material documenting the cultural history of Hawaii and the Pacific. The museum not only collects books and other material, it also prints them. Below the library is Bishop Museum Press, which has been publishing since 1892. On the floor above, there's something that used to be part of the library, but is now its own separate unit. It's the visual collection, where more than 750,000 photographs are preserved. They document a century and a half of life in Hawaii. There's also a moving images collection with 600 historic films and early videos, everything from home movies to professional productions. Here is the museum itself, captured by a home movie camera in the 1920s. Unfortunately, all film used before the 20s was nitrate stock, most of which eventually decomposes. This film was taken by Hawaii's most famous photographer, Ray Jerome Baker. It also was taken in the 1920s on nitrate stock, but was transferred to safety film before it was lost. One of the museum's most renowned staff took this film. It was shot by now retired anthropologist Kenneth Emery shortly after World War II on Kapinga Morangi, an isolated atoll in the Western Pacific. The scientists were there to study the people and their culture. Museum researchers over the years have made expeditions to every corner of the Pacific. The museum's newest exhibit area opened in 1990 as part of Bishop's Centennial. The Castle building is the largest exhibit area built at the museum since the turn of the century. It's named for the late Harold Castle, a prominent benefactor. The building opened with an exhibit from the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. The exhibit is about America's two most famous volcanoes, Hawaii's Kilauea and Mount St. Helens.
And this is a cone that grew over time as eruptions continued to fountain out of the rocks. And
one of the ideas behind having this particular exhibit was to show that Bishop Museum also is devoted to natural history, not just cultural history. Castle has nearly doubled the museum's exhibit space. This will allow the museum to host the kind of large traveling exhibits regularly seen at mainland museums. The building is intended to be a window on the larger world. Exhibit space is only one facet of the museum. Behind the scenes, there are more than 200 staff members. This is the archaeology laboratory in Bishop Hall. It's one of several labs where museum staff conduct ongoing research, much of it the result of field expeditions. It's in this lab that one of the newest units at the museum does some of its work, the Applied Research Group. The group offers scientific services to government and private interests. Museum archaeologists, botanists, and zoologists have worked on a broad range of projects, providing expertise in such areas as historical significance and environmental impact. For most of the museum's history, research dominated things, sometimes at the expense of public programs, and visitors often were tolerated more than welcomed. The Director of Research Programs says that was the case, but not now.
Yesterday's researcher had probably a smaller perception, if that's the right way of saying it, of the need to share information with the public, not just through scientific publications, but with exhibits, with lectures, and so forth. Today's researcher, I think, is more aware of that need to share with the public.
Most of the public have never seen what may be the museum's most famous collection, most famous at least in the science world. The collection is stored in this room, where the temperature and humidity are carefully controlled. In this room there are more than 13 million insects. All of them are perfectly preserved, cataloged, and arranged in a compactor system, allowing maximum storage in minimum space. The collection is the third largest in the country and attracts entomologists from around the world who come to Hawaii just to work in this room.
Well, a lot of these that you've got here are the ones that I've written about in this book. They've got these stinging caterpillars, and they're very common on palms in Southeast Asia. And of course,
well, that makes them major important pests.
It does, yes. You certainly don't want to let them in here, because there are quite a lot of palms under Hawaii.
The museum also has comparable collections, though not as large, in its departments of anthropology, botany, and zoology. It's on research in these departments that the museum devotes a significant part of its resources.
It is very important for a museum to have research, again, because of the direct value that research provides to its public programs, both through exhibits, interpretations, lectures, and so forth. And secondly, because of the value that that research will provide not only for the museum, but for the community in which that museum is located.
Insects are not the only things in storage. Most of the museum's total collection is there. In fact, for every item on display, 100 are not. That's because Bishop Museum still has relatively little exhibit space compared to other museums. Here is just a small part of the anthropology collection. It's as if you were in a huge family attic or garage with everything of value the family ever owned. In some ways, that's what it is, an accumulation of things tracing the cultural history of the people of Hawaii. You should know that the museum does not store all of its collection in this fashion. The more valuable objects are carefully put away to protect them. One of the things the valuable objects are being protected from is light. Just as light will fade curtains or a photograph in your home, it will do the same in a museum. So light levels are kept relatively low, contributing to the reputation of museums as being dark and rather dismal. The use of flash bulbs by visitors is not allowed to cut down on the most dangerous light, the ultraviolet. UV light causes rapid fading. It also causes molecular changes in objects, making them stiff and brittle. The museum uses indirect light for the most part from special bulbs that minimize any damage to objects on display. With special objects, such as King Kamehameha the Great's feather cloak, further precautions are taken. They're only on display for limited periods of time and then put away in safe storage, away from any light.
Objects are rotated on exhibit and then rested in the collection storage areas in order to prolong the time that they can be enjoyed by the public and viewed in the exhibits. Being on exhibit is the stress on the object, and so if you can break that up over a period of time, you can give each generation a chance to see it, not continuously, but sometime during their adult lifetime coming into the collections and the exhibits, they'll have a chance to see the object.
Termites and other insects are as much a threat to many objects on display as light. The museum calls on a private company with specially trained professionals to attack the problem.
Go seek, go show me, seek, show me. Good dog, let's check it out. Let's go to work. Go seek, go show me, seek, show me. That's a good dog, you show me.
The dog is trained to seek out insects using its acute senses of hearing and smell.
Show me.
The dog is especially careful in the display cases, never touching the objects on display. So far, this dog and another one like him have given the museum's display cases a clean bill of health. The same cannot be said about the building itself. It has termites, as the dog is about to show us and tell us.
Show me. You show where they are, let's dig them out of there. Well, show me, get them out. Good dog, dig them out of there. That's a good boy. You show me. Dig them out. Dig them out. You show where they are. Dig them out of there. Good dog. Show. Dig them out of there. Good dog. Show me. Dig them out. Good boy.
As dangerous as insects can be, they are only part of a bigger concern.
My major concern is what we're sitting in, a 100-year-old building, where it's beautiful to look at, and it provides an interesting backdrop for some of the exhibits. But at the same time, it is 100 years old. The standards for structures 100 years ago were very different. Our needs, temperature and humidity control, insect control are harder in a structure like this. So we're working to modify the building and bring it up to standards, and at the same time not interfere with people's enjoyment of the exhibitions.
Bishop Museum, like museums elsewhere, is changing. Castle building, for example. It has climate control and all the latest in museum building technology. It also represents how the museum is trying to compete with other leisure time attractions for the public's attention.
We are another item on people's list about how to spend their time and money, and we want them to feel like the experience they get at Bishop Museum is worthy of them making a choice in our favor. And so we work very hard to both tell them what we're doing and making that experience when they pay that money or and spend that time with us something that they'll want to repeat.
This made what they call a watermark. It made a very distinctive part of the pattern.
There are new programs for children, both in the schools and at the museum. A few years ago, the museum took some underutilized space near the main entrance and transformed it into the Hall of Discovery. It's a place for children to learn and have fun. The children also are free to move around and explore.
Okay, that one. How about... Oh, yeah! Ayaw ko double job you.
The museum's planetarium is further evidence that things are changing. When it opened in 1961, the planetarium was as up-to-date as anything of its kind. But then came the major advances in space exploration and astronomy. The planetarium soon was functionally obsolete. So in the late 1980s, it was renovated and now offers a variety of audio-video shows using modern technology.
I think museums are moving into an era where they realize that how they service the public is most critical. And they're broadening their services and their programming to include a greater part of that public.
The old Kalihi room is another sign that things are different. Instead of the same exhibit year after year, the exhibits are now changed every few months. Here is an exhibit of work by Hawaiian sculptor Rocky Jensen.
Blue, I have this from the American Association of Museums that we need to fill out and get in.
Okay,
and
she did mark a pages then.
the pages, I think,
Okay,
are marked.
this
You
I
might
need.
check and see.
Donald
if they're
Duckworth
marked.
was hired as director in 1984 to revitalize the museum and change its image as the monastery in Kalihi. Duckworth came from the Smithsonian after 24 years in management and entomology research. He says that when he arrived here, he found a museum stuck in time.
Bishop Museum was a classic, traditional institution that was engaged primarily in gathering collections and studying those collections in a scholarly fashion. In the museum world today, with contemporary society as demanding as it is and the need to know so great, the stuck in time is a shorthand for our not advancing and changing as our sister institutions in other parts of the country had changed. More public programs, more understanding, more learning.
The new director went about the job of changing things. People were let go, research cuts were made, all part of a streamlining of the overall operation. Not everyone liked what was happening, but the changes continued anyway. One thing the director tried to do was convince potential donors that the museum no longer was a poorly run, loose association of academics as it was perceived to be.
The museum for many years had been experiencing financial difficulties. The transition from a scholarly, somewhat reclusive organization had in many ways reflected itself in and poor business practices. Resources received would not necessarily be handled in the fashion that businesses were accustomed to. So we had the reputation in the business community of being academics and not living in the real world and abiding by business practices in that world.
The museum has stabilized what had been an unstable financial situation. That was done in part in 1988 when the Hawaii State Legislature named it the State Museum of Natural and Cultural History. The designation acknowledged in name what had been a fact for 100 years. It also assures the museum a reliable source of limited funding.
It has meant for us that we have been able to plan for an annual appropriation from the general revenues of Hawaii, which allows us to pay for some of those things which are more difficult to get public support for. The electric bill, more security personnel and devices, more fire safety devices. Those are things that oftentimes one has difficulty raising private money for. It helps underwrite our increased operating costs as we serve the public more.
Several years ago, a National Commission on Museums issued a report on the state of museums in America and what they should do to prepare for the 21st century. The report reminded us that museums are places to stimulate curiosity, give pleasure, and increase knowledge. But the report concluded that museums never have adequately described or promoted the significant contributions they make to the quality of human experience.
Museums truly have never really communicated that worth in the way that we're trying to do today, and we think we're being effective in getting that message across, that we are vital to the health and welfare of the communities that we serve.
And this was probably what the chiefs used.
The Bishop of Kalihi begins its second century in transition. What started as a treasure house for the Kamehameha royal family has become a natural and cultural history museum of world distinction. Whatever changes the next 100 years bring, the museum would do well to remember something curator William Brigham said in 1903. A museum like this is never completed, indeed is never finally arranged. If it ceases to grow, it dies, and its remains should be scattered to the four winds to enrich other living museums.